Hi guys, it's John from Brightwall Gaming. Just a sort of quick and easy video here, just to as part of my my basics series, to cover off how to do dry brushing. So moving on, hope you enjoy it. Right, so what are you going to need for dry brushing? You are going to need some knackered old brushes. So these are the ones which essentially I've absolutely knackered. They're ancient old, and so yeah, these are the ones I use. Why? Because all you're going to do with dry brushing is knackered brushes even more, so use your old ones. You need paint, obviously. So today I'm going to be using some green, I'm going to be using some various beiges, and then obviously you need a palette because you've got to put your paint somewhere. But most importantly, you need paper towel or something similar to take the excess paint off your brush. Cool, right, so let's give it a go. So the first thing I'm going to dry brush today are a couple of bases. So I've got this here, which is a street base, and this one, which is a slightly bigger one. They have previously been painted up with, what did I use? I used Stonewall Grey for the pavement, and I used some Sombre Grey, which is dark grey, for the road. So what am I going to do? I'm not going to use Sombre Grey. I'm going to use Stonewall Grey to dry brush the dark grey, so going up a tone, and then I'm going to use Bone White, which is a creamy colour, to then do the pavement. Okay, right, let's give that a go. So I'm going to start off with the Stonewall Grey for the road. I'm just going to have given this a good shake, and hopefully it comes out nice and thick, which you can see there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my brush. So I'm not going to water this down at all because you want this to be thick. Important, you're using a dry brush, clues in the name, and you're going to dip that into your paint. Okay. So try and take off some of the excess before you get going. But essentially what you now want to do is work this into the bristle, but you want to take some of the moisture out of it. So what you're seeing is you're coming to the point where you're only just seeing the paint come off. Now, another way that you can test this is just go on your thumb. So you've got some coming off my thumb still. So I'm just going to do that. Because the point being is you just want a tiny amount that's just going to pick up on the bits of the terrain or whatever it is that you're dry brushing, where it's going to pick up. So then what you do is you just very lightly brush across the grain. And what should happen now is that the colour should be picked up by all the bits of the model that are sticking up, and it should just catch on the edges, and that should bring you a little bit of a highlight. So it's really quick, really easy way of getting a highlight on your bases. So you can see just that's picked up just on the edges. Okay, so let's do the same again. Let's do this on the other one. So a little bit of paint on the brush. Take off all the excess, and then you give it a dabble. Try and take the worst of it off. Just check on your thumb, make sure you're not doing too much. And then I'm going to be careful with this one that I'm not catching the grate too much, and that should sort us out. So that is that. Dry brush. Now sometimes when you dry brush it gives a bit of a powdery effect, which sometimes, so when on something like this, which is stone, that's really cool. But if you're doing it on like a vehicle or whatever, that can be a bit of a pain. So then what you do is you just, on the very, very extreme highlights, that's where you come in and you do your edge highlighting. So a nice thin brush, using the edge of your brush, and then you go around. So I'll do another video on edge highlighting at some point. I'm just looking over this. I'm just going to get just this, just a little bit more, because it's just not quite done it. There we go. Right. So there's, I mean, some of the paint ranges do like specialist dry brushing paint, so Citadel definitely does. But I find, and they're almost like wax the way that they work, because they're just so thick. So you've got much less liquid in the paint. So they are a bit easier to get the. So because I used the original colour previously on the next bit, so this is me just moving on to the bone white, which is the next area I'm going to dry brush, because I started off with this, with the stonewall grey on these areas. I'm not too fussed about the colours bleeding a little bit. So, the benefit of doing this is also picks up that high edge that you can see on the edge of this base. Just makes the sort of the edge of the base more pronounced. Right, and that one pretty much done. Another great thing about dry brushing is that it dries nice and quickly as well, so you can handle it pretty quickly afterwards, because you're putting such a small amount of paint on and you've got most of the moisture out of the paint before you get it on there. So this here is the base for another model which I need to dry brush, so hence the green at the beginning of the video. And he will be getting a dry brush in just a second. Right, okay, so that is that dry brushed. Cool. Right, so the next thing we're going to dry brush is this guy here. So I've sort of got the first layer of paint on, and rather than going in and at the highlighting stage and doing all this skin, because he's a bit of a sort of Incredible Hulk sort of character, what I've done is I've just sort of base coated him, chucked a wash over his skin, and then I'm just going to dry brush all the skin just in a lighter green. So with that one, I initially did a camouflage green, which is a sort of yellowy sandy colour, which is all fine, but I wanted to give it a bit more green in the highlight. So the thing is with dry brushing is it doesn't come off as essentially the true colour. It's only gonna, because you're not getting a really thick layer. So I'm going to use Goblin Green, which is a greener green, if that's fresh, and then I'm just going to dry brush all over his skin. And then when I come to actually sort of painting all his clothes and all that sort of stuff, I've just got to be really careful that I don't catch any of the sort of the big muscles that he's got. So, right, let's get on to him in just a second. Right, so let's get some green in there. It comes out nice and thick. That's not too bad. So yeah, this is where using colours like Citadel colours is probably maybe better than using Vallejo, because they come out just a little bit thicker. So sometimes people find them better for dry brushing, but you work with what you've got. So right, let's get this brush loaded up. Again, just another knackered old brush. I have several. So basically, as you sort of use your normal layering brushes and they get knackered over time, just don't throw them out. That's what I do. I just so your bigger layering brushes. So your sort of size 2s and above, or in this case this is just a Citadel large brush. They're fine for sort of big areas and what have you, but they're not sort of high quality brushes. Cool, right, and then on we go. What you try and do is essentially try and go perpendicular, so crossways to the direction you're trying to go with. So in this case, just trying to go like across his toes rather than in line with his toes, because the whole point is that you don't want paint to go in the grooves. Essentially, less is more with the brush, because in terms of the paint, don't try and rush it, because essentially less, because what you can do is you can just build it up in layers over time, because if you put too much on, it goes a bit splodgy and it just doesn't work. I think this is really doing what I want it to do, which is great. So it's giving just a more greeny, hulky tinge to the colour, which is really good. And also it's just sort of bringing up the highlight nicely, trying to get the effect I was after, which is perfect. So this model here is from a game called Twisted, which I've been doing a series on. If you're interested in those, then by all means check out some of my other videos. It's a really cool game. The models are absolutely awesome. Oops, sorry, I'm taking that out of view for you. Let's get just a little bit more. So yeah, the models are just absolutely awesome. They really sort of push you to make your painting better, which is kind of, if you're like me and you got into gaming because you got into painting. So I started painting first, and modelling first, and then I was chatting with a guy in the shop, and he said, "Well, why don't you come along to our gaming night?" And I did, and I got into gaming. So for me, rule of cool is what matters. So cool models really matter to me, and so does playing with painted models. So I'm one of those guys who doesn't play with unpainted models. I know some people do, and I know that pile of shame is a difficult beast to deal with. But okay, I haven't done his face. Just about to say I'm nearly done there. But yeah, the great thing about dry brushing is it's a really, really quick and easy step. And I'm really pleased that that's just brightened up his skin tone nicely. So that's achieved the effect I wanted it to. So where he was sort of almost sandy coloured before, you can see how it's really just taken on the higher edges, so the backs of his arms, where it's sort of, you're getting much more depth in the colour, so we're going from sort of that green through the sandy into the really sort of dark brown from the wash. Okay, so now what I'm going do is, this is now the stage where I'm going to go and start layering up all the other colours on it. So that's part of another video, so hope you enjoy it, and that's how to do dry brushing. It's not difficult and it's really quick, easy, and gets good results. Alright.